his rocks and he sticks it in a sling and he just starts waving it and and everything goes silent. And then all of a sudden Goliath, timber! I have 5 smooth stones from a river. Did you know that the Bible has all kinds of rock stories? I'm going to tell you one of the most famous ones that you've probably already heard of. It's the story of David and Goliath. Do you know that story? Well, we're going to make rock art today and actually build David and Goliath. And if you go get your rocks, then you can build some of this with me. I'll show you how to make a David actually throwing one of his stones with his sling. I'll actually build the rock art for you, and then I'll show you how to do it yourself. And if you don't have rocks right now, that's okay. Just keep collecting the long ones and the circle ones, and pretty soon you'll have enough rocks to start telling your own stories with your own rocks. That's one of my favorite stories in the Old Testament, partly because there's a young person in the story who's the hero of the whole story. Now, David was just a shepherd boy. David was a boy with 7 brothers. They were all older than him. He was the youngest child, and he probably got picked on a lot because sometimes when you're the youngest, you get teased a lot. Well, the oldest brothers went off to war because Israel was going to war with the Philistines because the Philistines came in and they were going to take over Israel. So they were their biggest enemy, and Israel are the good guys. And in this story, the Philistines are the bad guys. David was part of Israel, and David turned out later in the story, after he grew up, David became the king of Israel and a prophet, and he was a super important character in the Old Testament. But we're talking about when David was just a kid and he didn't know anything about all of that. Well, his 3 older brothers were sent off to go fight that battle with the Philistines, but David had to stay home. But David was a shepherd, so he took care of all the sheep for Dad, whose name was Jesse. And he took care of the sheep out in the field, but part of taking care of the sheep, part of the job was you had to protect the sheep. And that meant if some wild animal came in, you had to scare it away or just take care of the sheep. Well, one day a lion came in and took one of the sheep in his mouth and was going to run away with him. But David, even though he was just a young person, he went after the lion and he took the sheep out of the lion's mouth, and then the lion turned on him and he grabbed the lion by the mane and he beat him. I don't know, but somehow he won and the lion died and he was able to save all the sheep. And that's what a shepherd does. He puts his life on the line for his sheep. And he did that, and he was successful. And then a bear came and he had to do the same thing, and he fought the bear and he won the bear. So David had already developed some skills and some confidence, but he learned a very important secret. And this secret is kind of the centerpiece of the whole story. Do you know his secret? How he was able to win the lion and win the bear? Well, I'm going to tell you about that secret because it's the same secret he used when Goliath came on the scene. So what happened? Well, he's at home while his brothers are at war, and the war never happened because Goliath wanted to fight one person, not the whole army, and nobody from the Israel camp wanted to go fight Goliath. Do you know why? Because Goliath was mean and he was huge. I mean, this guy was like almost 10 feet tall. I mean, we've never seen somebody that's 10 feet tall in our day and age. That's how tall he was. And he was big and he was mean and he had armor and he had a staff and he had a sword, and nobody wanted to fight him. So for 40 days, Goliath came down into the valley, and there was the Israelites and the Philistines, and then this valley, and every day Goliath would come down and he'd go, "Send me a man to fight me." And everybody over here in the Israel camp went, and they went into their tents. Well, every day for 40 days this happened. Well, meanwhile, Jesse, the dad of the boys who went to war and the dad of David, Jesse said, "David, why don't you go up to the front lines of the battle? Because we don't know what's going on. And go find your brothers and take them some really good food. So Jesse, the dad, had David take the cheese and the bread and the yummy stuff over to the 3 older sons. And probably David was a little excited about that because that'd be exciting to go to the front lines of the war, right? A little scary, but also exciting. So David takes the journey and he gets there. And just as he's delivering the food and finding his brothers and his happy reunion, but kind of strange that no war has happened yet, he hears what they're all hearing every single day. Goliath comes out and says, "Who's going to fight me?" And everybody's all scared. And they run off to their tents. And David stands there and listens to what Goliath is saying, and Goliath is obnoxious. Goliath is telling terrible things about the Israelites, and then he did the worst thing, is he started saying bad things about God. And David was like, that's ridiculous, not on my watch. You don't talk about God that way, and you don't talk about my people that way. And Goliath didn't know about David's secret. And apparently, neither did the 3 older brothers or King Saul or any of those, because David had the courage to go fight Goliath. So Goliath's saying, "Who's going to fight me?" And David's like, "Well, I will," because David had the secret. David knew how he would win. Well, what was that secret? I bet some of you already know. Well, the word was spread, and King Saul heard that David wanted to fight Goliath. And so King Saul had David come to his tent. King Saul was in charge of the whole army. And King Saul said, "Son," because, David's just a little person. He goes, "What are you thinking? You can't fight Goliath. My best, strongest armored men are afraid to fight Goliath. Why would you, little thing, be willing to go fight Goliath?" And David said, "Oh, because I have a secret." He said, "First of all, you need to know that I've already slain a lion all by myself and a bear all by myself." And he convinced Saul that maybe there's something to it. But then he told him his secret. He said, "The reason why you guys are too afraid to go fight this giant is because you don't realize that this is the Lord's battle, that we go in the name of the Lord, and the Lord will fight our battles for us. We just have to have the courage to do our part." And King Saul thought, this is very interesting. This boy has great faith, and he has fought a lion and a bear, and maybe there's something to this, and nobody else is willing to go out there. So King Saul says, "Okay, you can go fight him, but let me give you my sword." He brings out his sword. I mean, King Saul's sword must have been huge, and poor David wasn't so huge. And then King Saul took his big, huge shield and was like, "Here, have the shield." And I can imagine David was probably just like, oh, underneath all of that weight. Well, David said, "That's not going to work." And he gives him back his shield and his sword and gives it back to King Saul and says, "That's not going to work." So David, just with his regular street clothes and his little pouch that he has that he carries things in, and his staff, his walking stick, David goes out to a brook. That's like a little stream of water. And he looks for 5 smooth stones. That's where the 5 smooth stones come in. And he picked out his favorite stones. These might have been just like what he got. He put them in his pouch and he marched off to fight Goliath. Now, meanwhile, the brothers are like, "Oh my gosh, he's going to die." Everybody thinks, "Oh, this poor guy is going to die." And then there's a terrible consequence if you die. So what the rules of this game are, of this war game, is that whoever loses becomes the slaves of the other team. Pretty big bummer. So nobody wanted to fight because nobody wanted to become the slaves. I mean, everybody thought they're going to lose against Goliath. And once you lose, you're the slaves to the Philistines. So everybody's very worried about all of this. Well, you know who's not worried is David. And why is he not worried? Because he knows the secret. He knows that he's not alone. And it's not just because David's practiced and he's killed a lion and he's killed a bear, but it's because the Lord is going to help David and help all of Israel fight their battles. And David just has that confidence. So Goliath comes down again. This is the 41st day that Goliath comes down. And he says, "Who will fight me?" And he's all mean. And he says all these mean things about God and about the Israelites. And David goes running down the hill to the battlefield and says, "I will fight you." And he's just this little guy. And Goliath is like, You're going to fight? And then he just starts saying really mean things to David and mean things again about God. And David just lifts up his chin because he has his secret and he has confidence in the Lord. And let me read to you from the scriptures themselves and what they say. Right here it says, this is in 1 Samuel 17, and I'm reading verse 45. It says, "Then said David to the Philistine," that's Goliath, "Thou comest to me with a sword and with a spear and with a shield." He's naming like, you're so tough and you have all these weapons. He says, "But I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied." So he's pointing out, look, you've got all of your battlement, your gear, everything you have. I may not have anything, but I have the most important thing, and that is God on my side. And then he goes on to make this promise to him. He says to Goliath, David says, "This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hands, and I will smite thee and take thy head from thee, that all the earth may know that there is a God of Israel." Wow! David, he's looking up to him saying all this stuff and accusing him. And you can imagine Goliath was furious, and he comes after David and David just runs after him. And while he's running, he grabs into his pouch one of his rocks and he sticks it in a sling and he just starts waving it and everything goes silent. And then all of a sudden Goliath, timber! Goliath dies. The stone hit him right in the head. And the scriptures even said it sunk into his head and killed him. Just like that. Well, David knew that it wasn't because he was good with a slingshot. David knew it was because the Lord was with him and the Lord fought his battles. And then all of the armies of Israel cheered and David slew off the head of Goliath. And that was what was promised. And that was kind of the end of the story. So let's make the story in rocks. I'll show you how that works. And if you've got your own rocks, we can do it with your rocks. I'll show you a really easy way to do the David part with a slingshot. And while you're making the story yourself in the rocks, because you want to tell the story to somebody else, and it's really fun if you can do the rocks to tell the story to someone else, I want you to think about why David won. And think about the courage. Why did David have so much courage? Ability to go after these scary things. It's because he knew he wasn't alone. And he knew that God was with him and would help him. And that is true for us too. So whenever you have something really scary before you, it might be a bully at school or it might be a scary test. There's all kinds of things that are just really hard to do and just feel like they're way beyond your ability. Well, pray to Heavenly Father. And when you know that this is a good thing that you want to do, then He will help you. And just trust that He will help you and then have the courage to do everything you can to do it. And He will fill in the rest. Okay, let's make the rock art. Let's make David of David and Goliath with your own rocks. Now, I need to remind you that you should be collecting rocks. Every time you go outside, see if you can find like a circle rock or maybe a long rock. There's so many different shapes out there, but every single tiny and big long rock is so helpful. And the more of these long rocks that you have in your collection, the more fun it is to make rock art. So I've been building my collection for a long time, so I have lots of rocks to choose from. But it's so fun. You can get your parents and your aunts and uncles and grandma and grandpa and brothers and sisters, anyone to help you be keeping an eye out for fun rocks. Long rocks, this is kind of long instead of narrow. Long rocks, even if they're wide, are super important. And then round rocks, even if they're big or even bigger or super teeny tiny round rocks, we need them all. So pick up your round rocks whenever you're out playing and notice them. All right, let's make David. The first thing we'll do is find a body for David, something that would kind of go from his neck down to his bottom. And then let's put arms and legs on him. So what arms and legs could we use? Here's an arm, and maybe this one for an arm. And then we could have some legs. Dun, 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 dun. And then a head. Just put a circle up there. And there you have David. Now, once you put your rocks down, then you want to try other rocks to see how they go. So maybe we would like some longer legs. And let's see how that might look. And we have a bunch of choices up here. See, how about, that looks pretty long. And that one looks kind of the same length, which is helpful. And it's even a little bit curved, which makes it really fun. That one's a little bigger. And my goodness, lots of choices. Let's try really much bigger just so you can see the difference. So we'll take those up and put these here. Do you like that better? They seem a little big for his body. So I'm going to try maybe these and see how this goes. We might even want a little bit longer. And when they're bent, see this one kind of has a curve to it? That kind of looks like his knee bending there. So that's really fun. I always look for curves in my rocks. I much prefer to have a curve. Okay, I think those longer legs look better than these skinny little guys that we had. So let's put those up. Now, how about some arms? I think a little bigger arms would be nice too. So let's try. See, that's bigger. And this one's bigger. So let's move those out of the way. Try the bigger ones. I turned that around because that tapered at the end kind of looks like it's more like his hands. All right, this is looking good. Now his head's looking a little small. Let's try this one. Whoa, that's a little big, don't you think? Okay, how about this funny shape? Hey, that looks pretty good. Never would have expected that. Let's try it. Okay, now what is also fun is if you use feet and hands, which you don't have to. But when I'm out in the gravel, I look for teeny tiny rocks and I just keep them in any old container I can find. So here's a whole bunch of teeny tiny rocks, and I kind of look for triangles in the little rocks, like to be shoes. So look at that. That's not quite a triangle, is it? But for a teeny rock, it sure looks like a great shoe. Now here's one that almost looked like a triangle, sort of, but when I put it down, I'm like, oh, that could be a good shoe. Is there another one in here? How about this one? So you can just keep trying them out until you feel like you got the one that you really love. Let's try this shoe. Whoa, that's way too big, don't you think? He's got a shoe size problem if that's his feet. So probably not. Maybe this guy. Yeah, will that work? What if we were to turn it around this way? Oh, that looks better. Okay, a little small. Okay, I also would like a hand, and I need a tiny little rock. And again, triangles. This is kind of triangular. Triangles work great. So let's pop that on there. Do you like him having a hand? Does it make the picture look a little better to you? If it does, then use it. If it doesn't, then don't use it. This. Okay. Now, we need the slingshot. Now, today, if you have a slingshot, you probably have something that kind of looks like a Y with this in the middle, and then you got a string in between here where you can pull the rock back and boing, and the rock goes choo. Well, he didn't have slingshots like that back then, so I'm not going to make a Y. What he had was just a cord tied to just a little leather piece, and he'd stick the rock in that leather piece and swing his cord around and around. So that's what we're going to try for. So how about if this was like the cord, then the ball could be right here. So the ball would be inside of that. Does that look like something you can work with? Let's see if we've got a thinner rock. These are really hard to find, but if you're looking in the gravel, sometimes you'll find them. Here's a teeny tiny one. Let's try that. Teeny tiny. And then stick his little sling rock on there. That looks pretty good. Now, maybe we don't want those. Maybe this rock kind of it's bigger on the bottom, so maybe the rock is sitting inside of that. So we could stick that on. What do you think? That would work. So just one rock would be great. Here's one that kind of, it's like a little bag. Looks like he's gonna throw it back at Goliath. We don't want to do that. Here's another weird one with a little thing sticking out. Now it looks like he's gonna throw a purse at Goliath. We don't want that. Okay, I liked this one. I thought this was really neat. Okay, that looks super good. Now, if you wanted to put Goliath on here, if you had some big giant rocks, then you could make Goliath. So here's a big giant one I have. But you know, this one's so neat. I like to use it like a hill that he's standing on. That's super cool. But you may not have a big one like this. So you could even use, like, here's a long one. I could use as a body, but that's not big enough for Goliath. So I might just use it for that he's standing on that. That'd be kind of cool. But we still need Goliath. So I've got, here's a big one I found. Okay, that could be Goliath. Here's also a big one. So any old big chunky rock that you got could be Goliath. And we just have to put a head on him. And then some legs. And I've got some big long rocks, like these ones that we could use for David could be legs too. Let's just stick these on here. There. He looks tough. And then we could maybe have a smaller head. And look a little bit better. He needs some arms. So, you know, we could even take these out here. Or here's some arms. Oh, he's mean. And he needs a shield, so we need another big round rock. I got these round rocks at the river. So neat. I thought these might be just like what David used for his, because the scripture said he had 5. And so I thought, wow, well, what if I can hold 5 rocks and see what it was like when David held his 5 rocks. Pretty cool. But no, those are too big for a head. So we could do that, or I have another big fat one here. Let's try that one. And then I even have, you could use a round rock for a shield. Goliath had a sword and a spear and a shield. I thought this rock was kind of cool for a shield. There, what do you think? We're getting closer, huh? And then we could even move David over farther so he's not too crowded. And once we get it all just the way we like, then we could glue it down and even hang it on our wall if we wanted to. Or what I think is even more fun is take a picture of it, just when it's perfect, just the way you like it. And then put all the rocks in a little baggie and share it with somebody and have them put it together like a puzzle. And they can look at your picture to do that. So there you go. There's David ready to slay Goliath. I know you can do it because you have some rocks. There's rocks everywhere. And if you just keep collecting your rocks, you'll have enough to make this beautiful piece. And then you can tell the story of how courageous David was and how he trusted in the Lord and he was able to slay his enemies. Okay, till next time, let's make another Old Testament story together next time.